Anyway, since we seem to be out of witnesses, I thought I'd drink a little.
Yeah. We're
Hey,
recording.
Rob.
Hey,
There we
Ted.
go. We're on.
Welcome back.
Nice to see you again. How was your week?
It was all right. It was all right. Had a bit of a cough the last couple of days.
What?
Yeah. So who knows?
You got to stay at home, mister.
They tell me.
Yeah. You just stay home. Tough it out. That's good.
Drink.
We can do a little more of this if you want. Whatever, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any sore throat? Anything else?
No.
Our viewers want to know. We have viewers. Did you see that? We have some viewers.
How about that?
Yeah, over 100. That's great.
We now have a podcast.
Perfect. Okay, so how do we get to that? How do we see the podcast or hear the podcast?
It's in iTunes.
Oh, okay. Good.
So,
Cool.
Look up Straight Law Cocktail in iTunes, and it's
Okay.
there.
Okay, cool. Right on.
We put a link on our YouTube channel. Watching this, if you're interested, and you want to listen to it while you're driving in your car, or something like that, just look at our YouTube channel after today. We'll probably have the channel up, but yeah, so it's kind of exciting, interesting.
That is. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm running on the treadmill, driving in the car.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, well, let's get started. So last week we started with you making a cocktail, and this week, as you can see, I want to make a cocktail. And I thought it would be fun and fitting that I make an old-fashioned, because here I am hanging out with you, Rob. Little old-fashioned.
Hilarious.
So let me get started, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to have a little bit of fun with it. And please know I am not a bartender. So please, feel free. If you guys want to leave comments about how I did it wrong, do. But I'm going to start by smoking my glass with some wood chips. I got some hickory wood chips here. I don't have a small butane torch, but I do have a big propane torch. As you can see, I'm inside. My son sleeping in the next room. So I'm hoping that this doesn't wake him up. There we go. Can you see the flame, everybody?
You can see that. I'm just going to pour myself another Straight Law cocktail while we're watching you.
Okay, I now have the wood chips lit and smoke is accumulating under my glass. And so while that is doing that, I will get to mixing a drink. So I've got some ice in my shaker cup, and I've got my funnel on top. And we will start with our whiskey.
Bourbon.
My bourbon. So they call for 2 ounces, and I think that this is a bit of an oversized ounce there, but that won't hurt me, I don't think. I'll be all right. And then the next thing we do is we add, and some people make their own simple syrup, right? And I think that's the traditional way. I just bought some simple syrup. But I did go overboard with the smoking with the wood chips, so I think that it kind of balances out. So it just wants a little bit of simple syrup, so I'll use the top of this thing to do a little bit of simple syrup in there. There we go. And they want, most recipes just say they want these aromatic bitters. So I've got some of the aromatic bitters, and it just says put a couple of dollops or whatever in there. But I've also got some orange bitters, and I'm going to use a little bit of that as well. And I think that typically an old-fashioned has some citrusy taste to it, and most people have an orange that goes in there. Now, I looked at a video on how to do this, and they said don't shake it, you got to stir. And I don't know why. But I'll do that. I'm going to stir it up with the ice. Bunch of ice in there. They said 12 stirs. I didn't quite get to that. I'll put the lid on. Pop the top off. And I got a couple of ice cubes to add to my now smoked glass. Did everyone see the smoke coming out of this? I don't think you can see it. But it smells smoky. And there we go. There is the drink. Now, most people do take a rind from an orange, and I've got an orange, but it's kind of old and it's the last one. But I've heard that people can use ginger, and people who know me know that I love ginger. So that is exactly what I'm going to do, is use some ginger in there. And that's my old fashioned today.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right, well, let's talk about the law. What are we talking about today, Rob?
Let's talk about COVID. Talk about parenting with COVID.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's what everyone's talking about. So, okay, let's talk about it. All right, I want to talk about more than just parenting. I want to talk about process and what we're doing, but let's talk about parenting first. How has that been going for you and your clients?
Well, I was in court on Thursday.
Okay.
Classic COVID parenting argument. One party thought the other party wasn't protecting the child from exposure, and the other party assured the court that he was, and the court had to make a decision about whether to continue the previously defined parenting time for both parents. And it's a classic dilemma. I mean, dealing with divorce anyway in parenting is difficult.
Yeah, hard enough as it is.
And then you add, in theory, what could be a life or death issue to the equation, and you have a mix that is destined for problems. And then you add to that the court is not generally available for people to access right now. There's, for the most part, a court shutdown other than emergent matters. And it makes,
so how'd you get in?
Well, the other lawyer brought an application to have the matter considered emergent.
Okay.
The court agreed with that.
Oh,
My
okay.
experience, from what I've reviewed, is most of the courts in Alberta where there's a cessation of contact from one parent to the other are willing to consider that emergent and are opening the court up to those limited applications. So
Now, that's not to say that that's acceptable, or that that parents should be doing that, and that we can just go access the courts if that's the case. We should be able to step up and work together, and it should be emergent, and it should be a pretty limited circumstance where we gotta bring an emergency application.
yeah, and that's the question. I mean, in a perfect world, and most parents, I should say, in my experience, this is the only application I have. I'm a busy lawyer. You're a busy lawyer. Do you have any COVID applications going on right now?
Not a one. I bet you I deal with COVID 5 or 6 hours a day right now to do with parenting. Don't have a single application ready. Not going to happen. Well, not happening right now anyways.
Yeah. So my experience is the vast majority of my clients have been able to figure out a way to coexist with the other parent. And that those cases where they can't appear to be unusual, or at least they aren't the rule, which is good.
Yeah.
One of the things, we've talked about this and that we know, high conflict parenting is a good recipe for a child with adolescent and adult problems.
Yeah.
And so parents, wherever possible, should try to find peace with the other parent, even if it means some compromise that they aren't completely comfortable with. It is my general advice.
Yeah.
Now,
So I've chatted with some parenting experts, psychologists generally, and there seems to be a consensus. And you know what? The lawyers in our area have shared these documents that are some recommendations from these experts. And there seems to be a consensus that, kids are going to struggle and have some fear and anxiety about COVID as it is, and their life changing and school not being available, or if you're not school aged, the older kids not being in school and being home all the time, or parents being home all the time and no daycare or whatever. The kids are going to be a little freaked out to begin with. And the parenting experts seem to agree, look, all things being equal, as long as the kids are safe, that life should continue with both parents as it kind of has prior. And I think that's probably pretty good advice. We don't want to, kids are resilient. We don't want to put more on them than they have to deal with already. So to change everything in their life, and then to also change how much time they spend with the other parent, that's a tough thing. That's tough on those kids. And especially if one parent wants to do that unilaterally.
Now, the problem is, on the flip side, what we think we know about COVID seems to change every other day.
Yeah.
And so what started out as not a big problem, no need for alarm, travel restrictions are not appropriate, suddenly the borders are closed and we're all going to die and it's just a question of when, and but it is a serious problem, and it's got serious potential consequences. And the thing I found interesting in the argument that we made, and I can't get into the details of the client's issues, but the difficulty, there's a case called Ribeiro and Wright, 2020, out of Ontario Supreme Court of Justice. And most of the courts are referring it. It's not a bad decision, but the thing that concerns me is it really doesn't have a nuanced discussion in my mind regarding the risk and how you apply that risk. And part of the issue is the risk to the child currently appears to be relatively minor, almost non-existent. Very few people under 18 have shown any significant problem with COVID.
Right.
But what do you got? Parents, or worse, parents living with their parents, which is not uncommon after divorce. So now you got seniors in a home with a child. And I don't know that the courts, in my mind, are fully balancing community risk, both in terms of the immediate community and the larger community. That child might be fine, but that child's exposure could kill somebody.
Yeah.
And that's a tough call, right? So on the one hand, and Ribeiro says this, well, we should start with the presumption that a court order should be respected. Well, to me, that's kind of a bullshit statement, candidly, because every court order before March 1st was not made in the context of the court going, yeah, this disease might come along that might kill a bunch of people, right? So we've got a pretty radical change of circumstances. So just sort of saying, well, we should respect orders. Yeah, I think that's a good concept, but I think it's a little more complex. Now, in fairness, the case I had, the judge seemed to, in my mind, understand that nuance, but yeah, right? So you go on the one hand, well, children need both parents, no question. It's hard to say one parent should be preferred to the other, but if you got a case where another parent is not fully respecting social distancing or some of these issues,
or somebody works in public, or and
when I reviewed the cases, there's very few, if any, cases where the court hasn't simply rubber stamped the order for the most part. Even in cases where one parent has evidenced a lack of respect for protocols to prevent the virus spread.
Yeah.
So it's a little problematic, but it gets to what we were talking about last week, where the judges are human beings. They're doing their best in a very difficult situation. And keeping
that's right.
Well, and we know this in family law, who do you believe, right? Dad says, I'm doing everything I need to do, and mom says, I don't think you are. Dad says, and when there's a primary parent, still typically the mother, dad says, well, I'll do all these things. Mother says, no, I don't trust you. Who do you believe? And so I think that's why the court tends to maintain status quo, because it's hard to say, and you deny children an effective relationship with a non-primary parent based on allegations that are speculative. It's a hard call.
That's right. Yeah,
that gets back to my issue, which is you should find a way to compromise. And if I don't care whether you're father or mother, you should try to find a middle ground, even if it means something less than what you perceive as perfection.
And you know what? There is no better justice than the justice made by the parties themselves. And I've had just an enormous amount of success lately with the parties agreeing as to what they're going to do and how they're going to deal with parenting. And it's ranged, right? So I've had clients and opposing parties alike say, hey, you know what, I'm working in the public, or hey, I got to go take care of my parents or whatever. So you know what, let's just do electronic access with the kids for now. I've had some agree, you know what, mom or dad's exposed a little more than the other parent. And so what we're going to do is we're actually just going to get together as a family, even though we're not living together and we're divorced or separated or whatever, and we're going to spend time as a family outdoors. And now the weather's improved, at least where we live here in Southern Alberta, and it's a possibility, and it's a little more safe, and you can maintain a little more distance and hopefully keep the kids occupied. So, and then I've had parents agree, yeah, you know what, let's keep doing our 50-50 arrangement. We might not see eye to eye exactly on what we should be doing about COVID, but let's maintain it. And then I've had some agree, let's increase our communication about it. Can we each provide the other assurances as to what we're doing to protect the kids and to adhere to social distancing measures and whatever. So yeah, those have been some really good outcomes, and I'm at 100% right now. Everyone's getting through it. I've been doing lots more mediations lately. We've been dealing with that issue too, and it's been fantastic. Yeah, people are really stepping up to the plate in our city anyway, for sure.
That's good. That's good.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and you know what though, I get that you had to go to court this week, and that happens, and sometimes people don't see eye to eye, and just doesn't work. And if a judge says, yeah, there's an emergency application and it's an emergency, let's hear it. That happens too. So, yeah.
I think the difficult thing is, leaving that case aside, which is unique, but generally speaking, I think sometimes parents don't fully understand the impact of conflict, both on themselves, but definitely their children. So you're arguing about kids that are 5 and 3 or 6 and 4, whatever. You see your kids as sort of these benign sort of non-participants. Well, first of all, that's highly unlikely. Usually parental conflict is going to be perceived by the children, and sometimes it's quite overt. But the other problem you're going to get into is if you don't have a cooperative relationship with your other parent, at some point your kid's going to be 15 years old. And they are going to be a challenge in most cases. That's what kids do. How are you going to deal with the big problems? How are you going to deal when you got a 15-year-old that's using fentanyl? How are you going to deal with a 15-year-old, 16-year-old daughter that gets pregnant? Or son that
running away from home. Yeah.
And you don't have a working relationship. And if anything, the other parent is antagonistic and may go out of their way to undermine what you see as an appropriate response, and your child's just lost. And then on top of that, one of the things I've learned from, there's an organization called the Palix Foundation. And any parent that's interested, I'd urge them to look at the website, palixfoundation.org. And what they say is high conflict between parents impacts children's actual brain functioning. It can make them more likely to be subject to addiction, criminal behavior, promiscuity. So I think it's important that parents don't underestimate how minor skirmishes can turn into significant problems down the road. But so if we're going to send a message out today, it would be just that. It would be try to find peace with that other parent, even when it's difficult. It's important.
And it's not for the other parent's benefit. And it doesn't have to be for your benefit. Holy cow, it's got to be for your kids. Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The stupid thing is, we make money when people argue, right?
So when we tell you,
part of me should be saying, well, if your ex is an asshole, you shouldn't put up with this. You should be in court, right?
Let's run a trial and let's finish it and get a resolution. Yeah. Then every time you have a fight later, come on back. We'll run another trial. Yeah. Hey, if you want me to tell you that, I'll make a ton of money.
Yeah.
But you know what? So when we're telling you, resolve this, make peace, be a family, even if it's, a separated family, do it. Man, that's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's hard. It's COVID thing right now. Even for me, I'll tell you the truth today. what's her name? Dina tells us that they're shutting the province down for the rest of the summer.
Dr. Gina Hinshaw.
Dr. Gina Henshaw is telling us that there's no Little League this year, no kids soccer, no concerts.
No Stampede, no fairs.
And I get it on a certain level, but there's a certain depression that goes with the loss of life that we knew.
Yeah,
So
there
I'm
is.
dealing with that. Imagine these parents are in conflict. So I'm understandable. I'm not judging people that
No.
struggle with finding their way with their former spouse or partner. It's hard times. The COVID thing makes everything more difficult. I get it, but
And you know what? Maybe to go back to our last week, there's a huge benefit to having mental health professionals involved in your life, whether it's with you directly or your relationship with your spouse, your ex-spouse, your kids. There's a huge benefit to that. And you know what? I've been working with a lot of mental health professionals on my files, as I always do, and that hasn't stopped because of the COVID. They, like us, are finding ways to still meet with people electronically and to deal with that. So it's a good segue back to our last episode.
yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about process. I want to know a little bit about process. So we talk about, okay, we're doing things a little differently. What are we doing differently, and how's that working out? How's your practice? I mean, people see we're both at home, presumably. I'm at home, you're at home. So there's that. We're not in the office together. We're not really doing that. Our office isn't open to the public generally. There's still some documents that have to be signed personally. And so we make arrangements for that. We have meetings electronically, just like this, right? We use whatever platform, and we meet electronically. We explain documents to clients, and then they can come in, sign documents in the front of our office. We have a table, it's sanitized in between each use. They take their pens home with them when they're done. We stand away, we sanitize when they're done, and then we take the documents, do what we got to do. But as far as the family practice goes, family law and divorce stuff, we've got, in my opinion, I think we've got about 5 different ways to resolve disputes. We've got negotiation, mediation, arbitration, collaborative law, and then litigation in court. And right now, the only thing that's off the table, for the most part, is this litigation in court. And, to stay on a positive note, just like all my parenting stuff has been getting resolved, we've been doing it by these other 4 methods, and it's been just fantastic. How about you, Rob? How's your practice looking? How's that going? Are you meeting with clients electronically? What are you doing?
Yeah, I've met with a couple clients by Zoom. The process reason for this, a lot of telephone calls. One of the things I've noticed is the meetings in my office, they tend to be an hour. I book them every hour. There's 10, and so they come in and they usually are there for an hour, and we charge by the hour. I'm finding that phone calls generally, even complex issues, maybe half an hour.
Hey, that's an interesting thing.
Right. And so I'm spending a little less time with the clients on the phone. And I haven't really asked them for some feedback. But, if they're going to save $250 for half an hour, that might be a benefit to them. So what they lose in terms of personal contact on some level, they may be gaining a little bit on reducing the cost. The other thing that was interesting is this application that we did. It was by teleconference. It was not in court. Nobody goes to court.
Right. Right.
Unless, you've got people in custody. But so we called in. I was sitting right here in my house. I was fully clothed and all. And at a certain time, you phone the court and you do the application.
Yeah.
Which is really unusual because a lot of people aren't aware of this. When we go to court, generally on what we call interlocutory matters and chambers, we might sit there for 2 hours before a matter gets called up, and your client pays for that. Well, when the court says, I'm going to have you phone us at 10 and we're going to start at 10:01, client's paying for nothing but actual work. There's no standing time. And I found that really interesting, and I hope that's something they consider expanding or continuing post-COVID, because legal fees are expensive. And if we can find ways to be more efficient and reduce the cost to our clients. That's pretty good. So this is one of the things. I was on a conference call with the provincial court judges yesterday. Not really a call. There's more a presentation from the provincial court judges where they were talking about some of these things being introduced in their courts. So it'd be interesting to see if we can continue that.
Yeah, that's cool. That is good. Yeah. Interesting. Good. As far as process goes, anything else to add? I mean, I think you're right about some of the efficiencies that we can take away from what we've been doing. We can be pretty productive, and we can be a little creative, and we can rely on technology a little more than we have in the past. And if that can deliver people, I guess, justice in a more efficient way, I think that's fantastic. We should have some takeaways from that.
Well, the other curious thing is, I've seen on the internet a little bit, we're going to see an increase in domestic violence. We're going to see increases in divorce. Honestly, I'm not sure that's true. I haven't seen any allegations of domestic violence since this thing started. Now, my clients tend to be a little bit different than they were 20 years ago. How about you? Like, have you seen any change?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I actually do quite a bit of work in our city regarding domestic violence. And I would venture to say, except for legal aid, I bet you I'm one of the busiest lawyers dealing with that issue day to day. And I haven't seen any increase. I've actually seen a decrease for sure as of late. Now, we need to keep in mind that domestic violence numbers are underreported consistently. And when systems are shut down like they are right now, that's probably going to be amplified a little bit, right? The underreporting or the no reporting. And so two ways that we kind of see domestic violence reported is to police agencies, and then police can help obviously protect victims of domestic violence. And one way they do it is they'll get what we call an emergency protection order in favor of the person who's been subject to violence. And so, and then the other way we see it is they can do it through their lawyer, right? So instead of going through a police agency, lawyers can go and help clients get what we call emergency protection orders, or sometimes we call them Queen's Bench protection orders, or generally restraining orders or injunctions, if you want to speak generally. Now, I was reading the news here in town, just our local news, and I came across this story, and there's this lady in town, Shannon Hansen, and she is, let me get it right, she was speaking to the media, and she works at Harbor House, and she says, look, only 1 in 6 of the people that they support typically or ever, she says, communicate or report domestic violence to police. And she says right now, they're not really seeing anything like that, and their numbers are down as far as people utilizing the services that they offer.
So this is an interesting point, right? Not to interrupt you, but...
No, go ahead.
We have kind of had the courts shut down for pretty much a month now, over a month maybe.
Yeah.
People are getting along. Things are moving along, not as quickly. Clients are a little frustrated that certain things aren't getting done, but for the most part, the world's not coming to an end because we're not in court every other day.
That's right.
And I think that's a curious reality that is worthy of some consideration. I remember when Ron Stevens, he's passed away now, but he used to be our Minister of Justice, and he was a phenomenally good judge. And I remember I was with him on a train actually in Edmonton one day, and we were talking about access to justice, which has been kind of one of my deals. And he was talking about how they're making it easier for people to get to court. And I remember saying to him, we don't necessarily need to make it easier for people to get to court. We need it easier for people to find resolution. And it's not the same thing.
No, it's not.
And so, there's this adage, one of my favorite movies is Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
I have some fear that if we make it simpler to get to court, if that's all we do, we'll fill it up. That's not necessarily a good thing.
No, let's examine that just a little bit. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is interesting. So the way court works is it is adversarial. That's what we call it. And it's adversarial in nature. And what that means is it's two parties fighting. They're adversaries, right? And so I always think of court, hey, that's my ring. That's where I go, and we're going to box. And that's where we're going to go and fight. And you know what? I love being there. It is my favorite place to be as a young lawyer. I make the most amount of money. I have to be smart, clever. I got to work quickly. I got to, be quick on my feet. I love it. I just love it. Is it a good place for my clients to be? No, it is destructive. Adversarial means we're going to break down relationships. It's destructive. And you know what? Even if you have kids together, man, you don't want destruction ever. You got to deal with those kids forever. It's not till they're 15 or 18 or 20 or 25. They're going to get married. They're going to have kids. They're going to have grandkids. Man alive, you don't want that destruction. But even if you don't have kids, you think destruction of this relationship that was something meaningful to you for a significant amount of time in your life is going to be positive? It is not positive. Court is not fun for clients. So yeah, I think you're right about that. Justice is not making sure we can get people into court. The best form of justice is clients making their own decisions about what they can do going forward.
Yeah.
And that's where they should be. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a conundrum, and it's something I think there's going to be a lot of debrief once this COVID thing resolves.
What can we take out of it? Yeah.
We pay attention to some of the changes and ask ourselves some questions that we maybe didn't ask ourselves before. One of those things might be, how much do we need courts, right? Are there processes, which people are obviously doing right now, that are more fundamentally constructive, to use your term, than beating each other up in front of a judge?
Yeah.
Times. I think there are a lot of people struggling, men and women. And right now I find it hard to look at the news at all.
Totally.
Because they exist to get attention. And that doesn't necessarily translate into honesty. So
let's give a takeaway as far as this domestic violence issue goes. Be close with your friends, be close with your family, especially now. And, that doesn't mean go and hang out with them really close. I'm saying, be in touch with them electronically. Let's stay close with those people. Be supportive. We don't know what everyone's going through, and domestic violence is a serious issue everywhere.
It is.
So let's stay close with these people. Make sure everyone has support, all of your social network. Yeah. Now is important more than any time. It's so important.
I'm not for a moment saying people shouldn't support Harbor House. I mean, it's
no, of course not.
Valuable resource when you have nowhere to go, because not everyone has friends and family. And so that refuge is really significant. Otherwise, it's bad enough for people in domestic violence. They tend to accept and blame themselves, and so I don't want to for a moment say, well, no, that's not an incredibly valuable resource in our community. I'm really concerned right now that what I find is there's other lawyers, there's government, there's all sorts of people right now. They're using COVID as a mechanism to accentuate their moment in the sun.
That's
right.
right.
Just saying, you know what? Ratchet it down a minute. Be peaceful with the people you're involved with. Take care of yourself and your families, and try to look at anything you see in the newspaper or online with a grain of salt. So that's my closing comment, I suppose.
And you know what? To top it off, I will reach out to both Harbor House and the YWCA here in Lethbridge, and I'm going to make an offer to see what I can do to contribute to them. They are great resources in our city, and they're very valuable for the people that suffer from domestic violence.
So, any other closing comments? We've been here about 40 minutes again.
Man, that goes quick.
Down a bit. Well, because you're so damned entertaining.
That's what it is. No, I will leave it at that. No more closing comments. That's it.
All right. Well, you have a good weekend. And
you too.
This will be on YouTube shortly. And
Cheers to everybody. Good weekend, everybody.
podcast. Cheers.